Sonic's dead, your teammate's a traitor, and you're now suffering from an existential crisis with the only thing keeping you going being a promise you made to a friend who was killed decades ago. Just a normal Tuesday for good old Shadow the Hedgehog. But don't get too lax, apparently someone is on their way to the Eclipse Cannon, and you're the only one who can make it in time to stop them, which means you need to go through Final Chase. My praise for the speed stages in this game is undeniable. I can't help but tout them as amazing levels, but unfortunately, Final Chase here is a speed stage in the adventure formula done Its opening, though, is actually pretty solid. It has you grinding on a long rail as you depart from the Ark and start your journey towards the Eclipse Cannon. You can see tons of the Ark's inverted towers in the background, along with non-stop meteors flying through the place. But these meaty asteroids aren't just for show. Some of them are part of the level design itself and explode when you get close to them, dealing damage upon impact, which is an incorporation I appreciate about it. The first checkpoint is actually right after this opening rail section, which is a bit strange. You'd think they'd place it a bit further into the level, but I guess the devs thought that players would get frustrated upon having to sit through the opening section multiple times if they die. If that was the case, then why didn't they put a checkpoint after the long city escape opening too? Maybe they thought no one would die there, so it wouldn't be a problem. Huh. There's an artificial chaos floating here in the sky that you can bounce off of to get a ring box, followed by another one of them down below. I'd say overall that their placements in this level are pretty fair. This mechanic, however, drags down this level hard. Omochao refers to them as spinning drums. When you come within a few feet of one, you'll get pulled in by its gravitational force and will remain within it until you break its pull on you by moving further away. Sounds cool, right? Yeah, on paper. The main problem here is that it takes away a lot of control from the player. This cylinder constantly swings you around and around in a circle, has this weird jittering problem where your character will stop for quick moments at a time and will not let you move left or right. You can't even properly spin dash when on them because of how it moves you around. These downsides aren't too bad on this cylinder in particular because it's rather safe, which makes sense considering it's the first one you encounter. My main problem with this section is, funny enough, Omochao. He tells you to stay away from the spinning drum or you will be sucked in. Hold on, this mechanic is necessary to progress through the level, so why is Omochao here telling you to stay away from it as though it's an obstacle that will impede your progress? Granted, this problem doesn't seem to exist in the original Japanese script, which simply describes that the cylinder pulls you in and doesn't say anything about avoiding it, so I guess this is more of a translation error than anything else, but at the end of the day, it's an issue that may affect or has affected English-speaking players. There's a spring on each side on top of the tube, so no matter which direction you jump off, you'll be fine and can progress smoothly. Up ahead are a couple enemies that don't really do much, along with a cute little side platform for some goodies. They don't really require much work to get, but hey, goodies are goodies. Through the hallway, or running above it, you'll encounter your first set of horizontal tubes. They, for all intents and purposes, function the same as the vertical tubes, still pulling you in, still swinging you around in a circle, and still preventing you from moving left and right. Like, look, I get what they were going for. See this platform below this cylinder? The devs expect you to reach it by landing on the tube, waiting a sec, and then jumping off. This is pretty straightforward level design and completely understandable in concept, but they didn't consider how awkward it is for players trying to leap off when they're automatically being swung about the tubes over and over again. If the tubes were stationary, for example, but still retained their gravitational force, then I feel like a lot of players wouldn't have as much of a problem with this mechanic. They'd be able to move a lot more freely within the gravitational space and will feel more like they're working with the mechanic instead of constantly fighting against it. And while I do appreciate these lips at the end of the tubes that prevent you from sliding off, I feel like they wouldn't be necessary at all if the tubes just stopped spinning. There's a vertical one up ahead that you reach by bouncing off an artificial chaos or spring. Either way, the top of it wants you to grab a pulley that's only on one side, which isn't as kind as the spring on each side from earlier. Not that you need this pulley to access the top of the tube anyways, but when you get up here, you may find something strange. If you press the B button, then you'll teleport to the top of the tube, and if you press it while moving, then Shadow will go whoa for a moment, preventing you from from doing cool tricks like spin dashing off the tubes for style points, which is pretty unfortunate. I do like how an asteroid is placed right in the middle of this path to forewarn you of this section, where you've got to use the tubes properly to avoid spinning right into one of them as they explode. On top of that, a bot will send out some missiles towards you, having the chance of creating a cool moment where you've got to skate your way up a tube as they try and reach you. They also use the asteroids as an obstacle when running down long platforms, forcing you to dodge left and right before flinging you off and having you drop through a bunch of them. It's a section that I really enjoy and feel like could have been expanded a lot more if the asteroids were the core mechanic of this level and not the tubes. But unfortunately, they aren't the core mechanic, the tubes are, which now have electrical barriers pinned around different sections of them. Beforehand, we simply had to run along them whenever, but here you've got to make sure you're on the right side of each tube before advancing so you don't get electrocuted, which is a perfectly fine and actually clever way to increase the difficulty. But this section ends up feeling more clunky than smooth due to the force movement of the tubes. If they were still, then this section could have been longer and with more complex gates where you've got to stick to one side and then skate to the other. But how it is now just makes you want to simply jump over each gate instead of playing the go around them game. Upon reaching the checkpoint, you encounter two tubes that don't forcefully swing you around them. Yeah, they let you stay on the same spot without worry. It's likely designed this way because the devs simply want to shoot you up to the next floor without swinging you into walls. But I really wish that they would have seen how much better these tubes are compared to their brethren. If they had just designed all of the tubes like this, with the added ability to move left and right on them, then most of everything in this level would be fixed. There are 3 holes for you to choose from. The left one grants you a 1-up, the right one grants you 5 rings, and the middle one progresses you through the level. I don't like how the game presents to you what looks like 3 different choices to progress, but in reality is just a single way to continue, with the other 2 simply being throwing item boxes at you. Final Rush does this idea right, where one path leads one way, one path leads another way, and then you've got your bonus item box. That way the player actually makes a choice, however luck-based it may be, towards how they progress throughout the level. The rail you inevitably land on leads to a pretty long section of vertical cylinders. As you can imagine, it's exactly as fun as it sounds. You hop from tube to tube, maybe jumping from a platform off an enemy in between. Whatever it may be, it's not enough to keep this section from feeling rather stale. It's a mere combination of jumping and holding up over and over that gets repetitive and leaves no room for charm or any sense of expression through your controls. The only curveball thrown here that's slightly fun is when you travel to the top of this tube, where you can discover the Mystic Melody and teleport down to the main route, which blows because you'd expect this portal to teleport you somewhere new and exciting, but it just drops you off where you were going to go anyways. You can literally see the portal you're going to come out of from here. They aren't even trying to hide it. The ending of this section is a little more interesting by providing a few enemies to bounce off of, but it doesn't save it from feeling drawn out. One long rail grind later and you'll enter a fairly decent part of the level. It gives you multiple paths to choose from. The top has you grinding down spinning tubes which you've got to hop across to reach the end platform. If you drop lower, and by that I mean way lower via landing on this part of the wall, you can grind along multiple sets of purple rails which eventually lead to the same set of spinning tubes, except instead of jumping along their tops, you've got to spin and jump off their sides. But you can also spin dash jump through the middle and take the risky route of grinding on the shorter rails to the end. Despite how awkward this mechanic is as a whole, there was a genuine attempt here at spicing up the tubes with different approaches. I can at least admit that, despite my distaste for them. But now we need to talk about a part of this level that has completely stumped me as to why it was created or what its purpose is. It's hard to get a good camera shot of it, but you can clearly see a rail that branches off a platform. Simple enough, right? Except there doesn't seem to be any feasible way of reaching said platform except via the rail. So fine, let's travel to the rail and see what's up. You'll find that it's clearly not us, since there's no speed boosters or anything to help us go higher, meaning we've got to do a few homing shots against the rail to build up some speed, which can be a little tricky, but with enough persistence it'll land us right on the platform. And as if that method of reaching this place wasn't already confusing enough, the platform in question contains nothing nothing. No item boxes, no chow box, no animals, no rings, just nothing. The rail stunt we did to get here was clearly unintentional on its own, cause come on, this is ridiculous. But you also have these arrows in the platform pointing towards the rail we just came from, an in-game indicator that we entered this place backwards, and yet when we turn around, there is no clear entrance. I've looked all over this section for some kind of hidden spring, rail, or platform that leads to this spot, but this place is truly just some random platform and rail that has no reason for being here and was probably an oversight left behind by the devs. I honestly can't see it any other way, and if you still have some doubts about whether or not this place is meant to be here, then take a look at this. The camera doesn't follow you at all when you go down the rail, and the rail itself doesn't lead you anywhere. It simply drops you off into the void. What a strange little spot. Fortunately, as you speed dash up the wall, you'll enter my favorite section of the level. It combines the rotating tube and asteroid mechanic into the most unique alleyway you've ever seen, where you've got to leap from tube to tube, dodging asteroids as you descend lower and lower. This is the one moment in this level where I feel that the spinning tubes actually work, and it's because they're not meant to stand on for long here, but to be jumped off of as soon as you're pulled in, turning them into fun little gravity platforms instead of annoying ones that slow you down. If you ignore the tubes or just straight up fall, then you can land on these lower platforms that take you to the same end result. One skip in this section that I love is landing on this indented platform here and spin dash jumping all the way to this other platform here where you can then make your way to the lower route. People can tell me spin dash jumping wasn't accounted for in development all they want, and hey, maybe it wasn't, but there are just too many fun skips with this technique that I can't ignore for what it has to offer. In the present, we should see what Shadow has to say.
This place hasn't changed a bit.
Which tells us that Shadow's either gone through Final Chase before, or just this area of where the arc is situated. He also says,
I don't know who you are, but I will destroy you.
Which is a great line, because from Shadow's perspective, Sonic's dead. He saw the capsule the dude was in blow up in front of him. So when Eggman says that someone is on their way to the Eclipse Cannon, Shadow genuinely has no idea who his target is, but nonetheless makes a vow to destroy them. This main path grinds you down to a standard set of tubes where you've got two different rail paths to choose from. The game really wants you to select the right path given the rings it teases you with, and if you begrudgingly accept, this rail will lead you to a bunch of horizontal tubes that awkwardly pull you around one another before spitting you out at the top. Was that a fun experience? No? Well, screw you! Cause the other rail route you could have taken was a much better selection, given that it lets you skip all of that crap below as you scurry along to land once more. This means that the rings were not being used as a helpful guide to the better route, but as bait to make you suffer. But there's no need to get upset at all that. You've got a rail elevator to climb, where you can jump into the other holes for a few rings, or absolutely nothing. What is with this level and making these holes you drop down into the most boring things ever? My reward for exploring them should not be me getting eye blasted by a slew of colors. It should be some slick alternate routes, or at least a chow box of some sort. This wall to the side here has better rewards than those holes did, and you can tell these boxes were just thrown here. But I digress from that mess, for I must confess that this stress will not become any less. There are tubes everywhere, and let me tell you, if there was any section in this level that should have convinced the developers to change the way these guys sling you about, it's this one. You've got to awkwardly move about them, attempting to land on one spring after another so that you can progress to each tube. Even more so if you're looking to grab the goodies on the side, which you probably won't be so motivated for, because at this point you'll likely just be tired of this mechanic and looking to complete the level as soon as possible, in which case I wouldn't blame you. The challenge of hitting the artificial chaos after leaping off a tube doesn't even feel fun if you perform it successfully, since timing your jump as you're being forcibly moved around is more about you fighting these mechanics instead of working with them. The pulley up ahead seeks to take you away from this land and back to Kansas, where you can spring to the final section, but alas, we must cover one last detour via this pulley and a mystic melody pathway. Here you're presented with an absurdly long vertical tube where you've got to avoid asteroids exploding everywhere and annoying electrical gates that are here to shock you, all the while dealing with an awful camera that struggles to show you where you're going as it constantly keeps pointing down despite you going up, and when you pair all of that with these stupid gravity tubes that you've been fighting against this entire level, you get what I think is honestly one of the most poorly designed sections I've seen in any Sonic game. If I had a genie that could grant me one wish, I'd like to be in the room where this section was developed so I can see what went wrong and how this somehow made it into the final product. The reward for traversing it is a chow or 1-up depending on what mission you're doing. How wonderful. On the main path, you'll take a rocket to the longest tube in the level, but don't worry, all you've got to do is simply hold down until you reach the bottom, and yet this non-interactive gameplay is somehow still more fulfilling than what came before. At said bottom, you've got to time a jump to hit the spring and subsequently leap through the goal ring, where you probably aren't thinking, wow, that was a great level, like with City Escape, but instead, wow, I'm glad that's over. What makes Final Chase here so interesting is that it does something that great levels with the central mechanic normally do, and that's introducing the mechanic simply at the start and increasing it in complexity as time goes on, asking the player to overcome differing challenges as they gain more experience. The problem here was that the developers didn't properly polish the gravity tube mechanic, so no matter how creative they got with throwing you into different situations with them, it wasn't fun because you had to keep fighting their physics in an effort to progress, which is quite unfortunate because all that really had to be done here was make it so that the tubes didn't constantly whip you around everywhere. Stationary tubes like these ones the whole way through and letting the player move left and right could have worked just fine and would have probably ended up making this level feel a lot more memorable and fulfilling to players that look back on it. Thanks for watching, consider becoming a member of this channel, and I'll see you next time. Take care.
Here we go. Ultimate victory.